The news hit the king like a ton of bricks. It's not what he expected. It's most certainly what he didn't want to hear. And as he listened to the messenger, the king was, he knew he had to make a decision, and he had to make it fast. An army was approaching, and he had to decide whether to fight or whether to flee. And this general was waiting impatiently, because his general thought, we can take these guys, no problem. But that isn't what was on the king's mind. You see, the army that was approaching was led by his son. And so he was in a tough spot. If I lead my warriors out there, hardened veterans, men who know how to fight, what's going to happen to my son? On the other hand, if he didn't, the people in the city, his army, his general, would be in a tight spot, at the mercy of this approaching army. And so King David decided that he would flee Jerusalem rather than fight Absalom, his son, who was looking to usurp the throne. He didn't have a lot of time, and so he took some of his basics and, probably a toothbrush, extra set of clothes, anything you could carry, and in great haste left Jerusalem. For a number of reasons. One, he didn't want Absalom to come and besiege the city. He didn't want war to happen, civil war, especially in the city of Jerusalem. And I'm sure it was really, really difficult for David to accept the fact that his son was looking to kill him. And so David fled into the wilderness, into the desert. And if you know the story of David, David had been there before. King Saul, the former king, had hunted David for years. And David had hid in caves and in the desert to protect himself and to keep himself hidden from a very vengeance, King Saul, who wanted to kill David. And so, as David left the city, there were people jeering. People had their chance to get a shot in at David, because here's the king, he's helpless, what's he going to do now? But also, as he left the city, people flocked to David. They followed him into the wilderness and pledged their allegiance and support to him. And it's while he is in the desert, thinking of his rebellious son Absalom, whom he loved very much, that David writes Psalm 63. So the title of our message today is called My Soul Thirsts for You, and we started a series in the Psalms, a winter in the Psalms, just last week, and did an introduction to the Psalms, and so you can catch that one on YouTube if you haven't, if you didn't listen to it last week. This is continuation, number 2. And so here's just a quick kind of what the Psalms are about. Ultimately, what we want to focus on during this series is relationship with God. And the Psalms show us what it looks like to have, not just to be in relationship with this amazing, transcendent being, but also to have a close relationship with him. The psalmists both, they model it and they teach us how to do it. And so what should we expect from the Psalms? The opportunity to draw closer to Jesus, I think, is, for me, at the height of it. This is, it's like a doorway. It's an opportunity for God's people to actually to see what it looks like, and to have a deep relationship with God, to know and learn how to relate to him, how you can talk to him, and how to walk by faith in a broken world. And so you can expect hope, encouragement, comfort, perspective, faith, and at times uncomfortable. What? The psalmist said that? You can talk to God like that? But it's an invitation to draw closer to a God who desires to be with us. He wants to be close with us. So the psalm reminds us of who God is and help us to reorient our lives around him. And so that's our overview of the Psalms, and this kind of statement, this is for us to kind of chew on throughout this series. The Psalms' honesty and sometimes shocking rawness draw us into close relationship with God, where pretense can be abandoned and openness can be embraced. That you can have an actual, real, open, honest relationship with God. All right, let's get into it here. Psalm 63. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings, I will sing for joy. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. Oh, David. But the king shall rejoice in God. All who swear by him shall exult, for the mouths of liars will be stopped. And so here's a little bit of the situation. We told the story. So Absalom, just a reminder, Absalom is trying to usurp the throne, take the throne of David. Actually was sitting on the throne in Jerusalem after David fled Jerusalem. He's in the desert. His heart is heavy. His life is upended. And his own son is seeking to kill him. Ultimately, Absalom's claim on the throne is to not just dethrone his father, but to completely take him out. And so this is the situation where we find David writes this psalm. He's worshiping alone. He can't enter the tabernacle that he is used to. And so one of the things we see in David is this relationship with God that is actually based on faith. That David's longing for God's presence, and he's using his surroundings, like the desert, and his natural feelings, like in the desert, it's hot, it's dry, they're in need of water, it is not comfortable. I mean, he just left the palace, right? This is the opposite. And so of all the things that a person on the run would long for, David gets it down to one thing: that he's longing for God, that he's longing for God's presence and to be in God's presence. And so that's our situation, and that's amazing, actually, that David is talking like this. And so here's kind of our bottom line for this, and this is what we want to walk away with at the end of this sermon. Your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. When the storm hits, and the storms of life do hit, what's going to happen? That's probably not the best time to decide, maybe I should have desire for God. Now, there is an opportunity there as well. But what David is showing for us is there is deep relationship that comes in the good times and hardships, and when things go really badly, your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. So let's just go through this psalm a little bit and kind of pull out some of the really important things that's going on here. First of all, first theme is thirst for God. Like I love that imagery, right? Desert, hot, dry. Has anybody been, further south than Bonnyville? Like south, if you've been into maybe Nevada or parts of California, Florida, Texas. You guys, yeah? No? Anybody? No, we have a few? What? I know you guys have. Arizona. Oh yeah, the people in Arizona are there right now. It's January. When it's hot, it is hot. My cousin owns a place in Palm Springs, and that's, when you're talking about hot and dry, weary land, wow. In the summer, that place is ridiculous. It is so hot. Death Valley is what they call it, right? Because it's so hot. And it's dry, and it's just like, but you guys, we can, I know it's winter, it's January. In fact, I even thought about that when I picked this psalm. I'm like, maybe we should wait till like April or something. But yeah, we can all imagine that. Right now, it probably would be like, oh, that'd be okay. But when you're in it, it's hot and it's thirsty. You need water, and it's just like, oh, the heat is just oppressive. And so in this situation, David is looking at his surroundings and going like, I feel thirsty. I'm hungry. I'm uncomfortable. I'm sweating. It is dry here. And he goes, that's like my soul. Because what I'm really longing for, more than even a drink of water, is I'm longing for God's presence. I am thirsting. More than my body is thirsting for water in this desert, I'm thirsting for God. That's awesome. Like, one of the things that I've done over and over, and I don't do this on purpose, it just happens, is as I read the Psalms, I'm like, I want that kind of relationship. I want to be able to say that my soul thirsts for God like David is in this situation. And he begins by doing this. He's affirming that, oh God, you are my God. It's not just kind of a introductory statement. It's a loaded statement. David is proclaiming, I belong to you. You are my God. Now remember that all the nations had multiple gods. So this is a significant statement. David is affirming one God. He is putting his trust and hope and everything into this one God. Kidner, a theologian, says this, the simplicity and boldness of "Thou art my God" is the secret of all that follows. So he's talking about, this is the hinge pin. The whole psalm is coming from that statement. Since this relationship is the heart of the covenant. You are my God. And so, as David affirms this, the rest of the psalm is flowing from that statement. You are my God. And he credits his thirst, this is very interesting, from being in God's sanctuary or his presence. And in that day, it was his tabernacle. In fact, there's a story about David where David is just desperate to get the Ark of the Covenant, which was a symbol of God's presence, back from the Philistines. Now I got to fill you in a little bit. Because they kept getting beat up by the Philistines, they decided we're going to take the Ark of the Covenant, and then we'll beat them up. Didn't turn out that way. The Philistines captured the Ark. And then as they brought it into their cities, their cities were hit by plagues. It was like, they were like, what's going on? And they put the Ark of the Covenant in their temple beside their god, Dagon. And one of the priests got up in the morning, came, and the Dagon had been chopped off at the feet and was laying prostrate before the Ark. And so he was just like, we need to get rid of this thing. And so they sent it to a different city. It's like, okay. It's not a lot of foresight there. Of course, same thing happens. In fact, it went to a few different cities until finally they're just kind of like, we got to get this thing out. And so they put it on an ox cart with 2 young calves. And they said, well, okay, if this is really Israel's God, the natural things for these 2 young calves to do would be to turn back and go to their mothers. And so what we see is these calves actually, even though they're lowing like crazy or mooing or whatever they do for their moms, they head straight towards Israel. And so that's the backstory. And David desperately wants to get the ark because it's been there for many, many years. Because it just came to a spot and the cows stopped and that was it. That's where the ark stayed. And Obed-Edom was the guy's house that it was in. And so David just desired to have the Ark of the Covenant come back to Jerusalem into the tabernacle. And so there's this whole story of David and doing weird things like dancing pretty much naked as the king in front of the ark, and his wife going like, that is horribly undignified and shameful, and wives? And you're like, oh yeah, I understand that. Was he drinking? No. But no, it was because of David's just passion for God, and God's presence was coming. He says, I'll be even more undignified than this, which is pretty crazy because that's pretty undignified. But you see, at the heart of this is David's just longing for God's presence. It's just amazing. And so that's all behind this. And so this symbol of God's presence, about his sanctuary, it's where he's marveled about God's power and glory. And his trouble has driven him to God instead of away from him. Warren Wiersbe says it like this. It is our regular worship that prepares us for the crisis experience of life. What life does to us depends on what life finds in us. And David had in him a deep love for the Lord and a desire to please him. Because David had seen God's power and glory in his house, he was able to see it in the wilderness as well. So that's the thirst. For me, that's why I picked this psalm. There's something about this starting where David is using this imagery and this thirst that draws me in, because that's the kind of relationship that I want with God. So secondly, so we just went through verse 1 and 2. Verses 3 to 7, what we find is David recounting God's love and faithfulness and remembering how God has his relationship with God and how God has proved his faithfulness throughout the years. And so he begins with praising God and gives us the reason for his praise. The reason for David's thirst and praise is this statement: your steadfast love is better than life. Like, what a statement. Again, just displaying the depth of relationship that that David has with God, how he views God. So he thirsts for him. But then he kind of narrows it down to here, like, this is where it's coming from. And this is why I'm praising him. It's his steadfast love is better than life. And remember, David is in the desert, so his life isn't that good at that point. However, David is looking on the whole of his life and how God has been faithful, how God has taken David from being a kid, taking care of his father's sheep, to king of the most powerful nation on earth at the time. And so he praises God for his power, love, and glory, and recounts how God has been faithful. And this is David's experience. So it's not just he's been faithful to others, which is still, we find that in lots of the Psalms where God is taking care of his people as a whole. But David is being really personal here. It's just like, I'm remembering your faithfulness to me. I've experienced this. So as David recounts his experiences with God, his praise comes from, he says, joyful lips, right? Which are probably parched, right? He's in need of water. He's in the desert. But his lips are joyful because as he remembers, he says meditates or he's laying on his bed, like he's thinking about it. He's dreaming about being in God's presence and desiring it. And so remembering God's love and faithfulness and who he is, who God is, reorients our perspective, right? Because it doesn't make sense for David to be in the desert and to be like saying some of these things in discomfort and pain, right? In hardship. And not all the Psalms are like this. And we're going to go through Psalms in the coming weeks that turn the opposite way when hardship comes. But we need them all, right? Because we want to capture what it looks like to be in relationship with God in all different facets. And in this particular case, David's remembering of God's faithfulness to him has produced something incredible. It produces thankfulness, joy, in a terrible circumstance, right? And has reignited, or maybe fueled, is maybe a better word, his thirst for God's presence in his life. It's reminded him the starkness, the emptiness of the desert, the discomfort has reminded him, and his literal thirst has reminded him of how desperately he thirsts for relationship with God. So that's verses 3 through 7. The final part of this psalm, it's David reaffirming his trust and hope in God. And so we have, this is what happens as he reaffirms in a difficult situation, he's praising God and remembering his faithfulness and goodness, and it produces this hope and trust that he so desperately needs in this kind of hopeless situation, right? Lose-lose. If you win the war against your son dies. If you lose the war against your son, you die. Like, this is a tough spot. And that, again, it makes David's words so powerful because of this situation that he's in. And so how does he reaffirm himself? Well, he uses words like clings. David clings to God. He says, my soul clings to you. Right? He's affirming God as his only hope, that God is his salvation, that his life belongs to God. Oh God, you are my God. And that he is giving the situation and himself up to God. And it allows David to understand the peril involved for those who oppose God, right? Now, this would have been difficult for David to say here, because his son is acting in this manner, right? When he starts talking about the wicked. So for him, he says, because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. The shadow of your wings in this particular psalm is, wings can mean protection or presence. In this particular psalm, it seems to mean presence. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. So he's like, God you're the one. Without you, I'm just going to crumble. But here's the opposite. Those who want to kill me, remember, it's Absalom, his son, will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. And then his final statement is very personal. And I think the power of realizing that Absalom is in that previous statement can't be missed in his final statement. But the king, which is David, will rejoice in God. He's choosing the path. In Psalm 1, when we introduced the psalm, it gave us two paths, the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. I said, God watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish or leads to destruction. And so this is his statement. All who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced. In all of this, David is saying, you're my God. I put my trust and hope in you. David reaffirms his personal love and devotion to God. So we come back down to this statement, and we see it in David's life. Your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. Now, one of the things we want to do throughout this series is we want to go through the Psalms. We want to actually see Jesus in the Psalms, because the Psalms point to Jesus, not just a few Psalms. They all do. In some way, shape, or form, the Psalms show us Jesus. And so Jesus personified the posture and thirst of the psalmist here perfectly, as he does throughout the Psalms. He gives us the posture. Jesus did this in the most amazing way. We see it in his prayer, the belonging. Teach us to pray, his disciples said. And so what did he say? Our Father. And so immediately, he is identifying that I am the Father's son. I belong to the Father. And so we have this, oh God, you are my God. That is a reflection of that. It's a statement of belonging, and that you are my God. Well, we find submission and surrender in the life of Jesus, right? Like David is submitting himself to God here. He's in the desert, doesn't know what's going to happen. It's a lose-lose situation. He's submitting himself and surrendering his will to God. And of course, we see that in the life of Jesus throughout his life. But probably the most significant moment is in the Garden of Gethsemane before Jesus is crucified, where he is pouring out his heart to God. If there's any other way, let's do that instead. And he says it three times. And at the end of it, he says, okay, I'll do it. Your will, not mine, be done. This ultimate act of surrender and submitting to God. We see it in Jesus. How about a plea for help? Right? Throughout the Psalms, we have this. And not so much maybe in this psalm, although there is. We see Jesus on the cross uttering these words, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is another psalm. Jesus is reciting a psalm from the cross. A plea for help. Where are you, God? Telling his Father that this is how I feel. That's what's one of the beauties of the Psalms. It actually gives us words for how we're feeling, especially in our relationship with God. That's but at the start, we're talking about this is what the Psalms expect from the Psalms, how to relate to God. It's teaching us how to relate to God, even how, the words that we can speak to him as Jesus prays the psalm from the cross. And so we have this posture. How about thirst? Jesus continually, it says throughout the Gospels, retreated to lonely places to spend time with the Father. He said things like, I only do what I see the Father doing. Like these incredible statements. It's like, wow, man, I would love to be able to say that. I only do what I see the Father doing. Like being able to see what God's Father is doing and then do that. Like that would be awesome. I have glimpses, but that's about as good as it gets. And how about Jesus' teaching on thirst? So we have the woman at the well where Jesus, he meets this woman in the middle of the day. It's hot. People don't draw water at noon. But this woman comes out just by herself. Jesus is sitting at the well. The boys have gone in to get some food. And he strikes up this conversation with this woman, asks her for water. Because he's at a well, but he doesn't have anything to draw the water with. And in this conversation, Jesus, he turns it into a different direction than anyone could have ever expected, and starts talking about a different kind of thirst and a different kind of water. And so in his conversation with this woman, Jesus says this, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. This is the literal water at the well. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Ultimately, never thirst for any other kind of water. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up into eternal life. And how about on the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is talking about who's blessed? What does the good life look like is basically what he's answering, which is pretty much the opposite of what everybody thinks. And one of his statements, he says this, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. This is what we see in the psalm here. This is what we see in David. He's hungering and thirsting for God's presence. And what a statement, for they will be satisfied. There is an element of satisfaction. In fact, David even says the word in part of his description where he's talking about food, which again, I'm thinking he's probably going like, man, that would have been good to have some food. But he's in the desert, doesn't have that stuff. And he's talking about being satisfied, just like he was satisfied at the table at the palace with rich food. That's how he's satisfied with God. So that's our psalm. That's how it relates to Jesus. That's how we see Jesus in the psalm. So the final part of this is, well, how does this psalm impact us? What do we take away here? What do we walk away with? I think firstly, we got to start here. It begins with thirst. Right? Our statement. Your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. Today's the day, regardless of whether the storm has hit already or not. But today is the day to begin thirsting after God in a different way. Today is a great day to start that. And to ask yourself this question, what am I thirsting for? What do I really desire? Where does my mind continually go? Or my wants? What do I really want out of life? I think David gives us the vision of what it looks like to thirst after something different. To drink the water that Jesus offered the woman at the well. to thirst for God's presence. I want this. I want God's presence in my life. Like, I really want his presence. And I know he's with me all the time. Like, I know that. That's knowledge in my head. But I want to experience it. I want to be more aware of it on a daily basis, an hourly, a minutely basis. I want to be aware of God's presence in my life. I want to think about him more. I want to turn to him more. I want to just naturally just find myself in conversation with Jesus more. And what we see in David is this thirst for God's presence. It's always accompanied with this craving for worship. Right? He's alone. He's away from the tabernacle. He's away from where the people of God worship together. He's away from the symbol of God's presence. He's longing for it. So I think let's put it like this. So, we call coming to church or going to church, kind of what we're doing right now. Like we use that language. So I just want to give you a vision, maybe, of what it could be and what it's actually set up to be. So you're not just coming to a service to sing songs and hear a sermon. You are entering a space that is intentionally created to meet with God. Right? In community with his people. Why? Well, there's more reasons than this, but from our psalm, to affirm that he is your God. Right? We said David's, in the psalm, it says David was thinking about God in the sanctuary, that it actually fueled his thirst. So this is an opportunity to come to affirm that he's your God. Again, significant. It's not just a statement. To praise him for his love and faithfulness, right? Steadfast love, faithfulness from generation to generation. Every moment throughout history, God has been faithful. He's never, ever, not once, been unfaithful. To recount his ongoing work, both in the people of God and in your own life. Right? As we respond to God, it's not just kind of a response, oh, thank you for being this kind of God. Or, I like this song. Like, those are fine. Those are inner things for people, right? We're just human. But there's something more, that you can recount God's work, ongoing work in your life. But you actually have to think about it. You have to reflect on it, contemplate. Like, how has God been working in my life? How am I different than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And then realign your commitment and devotion to him. Those are opportunities every week. You don't have to wait to come to church to do that. You can do it every day if you want. But there is something significant about meeting with God's people and doing this together as we recommit ourselves, realign ourselves, replace our hope and trust in God after a week in a broken world. In a broken and very busy world. This is a moment to breathe. And to ignite that thirst for God. Because the storms will hit. They will come. And your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. So firstly, it begins with thirst. Secondly, hardship drives us to God. I love what's going on here. That David's able to say this psalm, to recite this, to be thinking like this in the middle of just a terrible situation. So when things don't go our way, where do we go? Who do you go to first? David's going to God, right? His life is crashing down when he's in a dry and weary land. But how about us? How about you? When life starts going like, whoa, it's going the wrong way, where do you go? That's not a guilt statement. That's a reorienting statement. If you're not going to God first, here's the opportunity to change that. Get in and get a new habit. When your life isn't turning out the way it should, when something doesn't go the way you thought it would, when you're feeling disappointment, anger, or however many other of those types of feelings there are, the Psalms teach us to go to God. Start there. And that's my encouragement throughout this series, to think about this and to model what the psalmist did. In this particular psalm, David is remembering God's faithfulness, his great love for him, remembering all the things that God has done in his life. And it's bringing him to joyful praise and reminding him of his thirst for God's presence. And we need that thirst because our thirst for God and his presence will drive us to him in times of trouble. Because your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. And finally, we see David praising God when life is hard. We see him modeling this. It's hard to do that sometimes, especially when some of the feelings that you're sorting through aren't feelings just about other people, but they're actually feelings of disappointment, discouragement towards God. Like, we don't find that in this particular psalm, but we will in the future. Lots of psalms like that. But David is praising him in this really difficult time. And the praise seems to come easy, but it's not, right? Remember what's going on. Absalom, his son, whom he loves deeply. This is not going to end well. David knows it. There's going to be a lot of pain at the end of this. And so we see how praising God when life is hard. We see this actually happen in the psalm. It's counterbalancing how David feels about his life and his situation. The Psalms help us to do that because we gain perspective from them, right? It changes our perspective on things. And I just really quickly, here's the lie that creeps in, or the lies that creep in during hard times. Some of them. There's lots more, but I'm just going to do a couple here. 3, to be exact. Right? In our psalm, it was remember. The lie is to forget. That's not a lie. But the lie is that God wasn't really faithful. Right? That recounting those things, that was just coincidence. Maybe it wasn't God. And so we forget. That's a tendency. That's one of the tricks of the enemy. Instead of praising God and recounting his faithfulness and his love, we forget about it instead. Or secondly, we start doubting it. Okay, and just so you know, it's not wrong to have those feelings of doubt and to wrestle through things. It's actually really important. That there will be times when we doubt God's love, and we're going to go through some of the Psalms that do. That we doubt his faithfulness, his love, his character, all the things that are in Scripture. And what praising God does is it helps to realign some of those things. It doesn't necessarily remove the doubt completely, but it sure puts a dent in it. And in the end, when we're wrestling with who God is and we're wrestling with all these truths that we don't always experience, at the end of that wrestling match that you have with God is submission. And it's not God submitting to you, right? If you watch MMA and you're in the ring with Jesus, you're probably not going to submit them. Right? Not anymore, anyway. Maybe when he was walking on earth and is meek and mild. But we have a picture of Jesus in Revelation that John saw, and I'm like, no, I don't want to fight that dude. But just because, so here's maybe where that lie creeps in about doubting God's faithfulness. Just because he was faithful in the past doesn't mean he will be now. That's maybe the lie that's underneath it. And just one more to kind of look down. To give in to the shame, to start beating yourself up. I'm the problem, I'm always the problem. That one's hard. And I think the Psalms help us counterbalance that. Because they acknowledge truth that, yeah, you're a problem. And you have problems. But that isn't the problem. That God desires close relationship with you just the way you are. He designed you. He's proud of you. And his desire is for us to thirst for his presence. I think that brings joy to God. Your desire for God before the storm will determine your response in it. And to close, I want to pray this prayer from A.W. Tozer. It's in the pursuit of God. O God, I have tasted thy goodness, and it has both satisfied me and made me thirsty for more. I am painfully conscious of my need for further grace. I am ashamed of my lack of desire. O God, the triune God, I want to want thee. I long to be filled with longing. I thirst to be made more thirsty still. Show me thy glory, I pray thee, so that I may know thee indeed. Begin in mercy a new work of love within me. Say to my soul, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Then give me grace to rise and follow thee up from this misty lowland where I have wandered so long. Amen.